Hi, this is Tobiah Wilhelm, and welcome to the Wilhelm Scream. Um, this video is something that I've been thinking about for the last few weeks, basically. I wanted to talk about Luke Skywalker, who he is, what he represents, and ultimately what he means to not only Star Wars, but cinema and I think storytelling as a whole. He is coming up very popular in the last few weeks. He's spiked up in people talking about him because he has been in Mandalorian recently, which I've been chewing on who he is and what he represents in modern Star Wars as it is, and then what he means to me personally and how he impacts the rest of Star Wars as a whole. Um, First of all, I'll tell you a little bit about who Luke Skywalker is to me, and what it was like having this character in my childhood, and ultimately who he is now as I've grown to be an adult and a man and then a married man now. I still remember the first time I ever saw Star Wars when I was a little kid. My brothers had owned the VHS 3-pack that has the Star Wars character on the side, and I always thought that was super cool, something kind of different because it wasn't like any other VHS tape. It wasn't just a single simple one in a little sleeve. It was its own like brick, this massive little obelisk of Star Wars. And it had its own unique case, and it was always super interesting. And so I remember the first time I watched it was super important. It was one of the few times I was 100% invested into a movie, being, I think I was about 5 or 6 at the time. And I would usually lose interest in a film where I would wander off halfway through it once I understood what was happening and just go, okay, I get it. I think I'm fine. And then I'd go play with my toys or whatever. It doesn't matter what it was. Um, and yet, when I was watching Star Wars, it kind of hooked me instantly. Um, a lot of people will say that the first time they see it kick on, it catches your attention. But for me, as a little kid, it really did. Seeing the Star Wars logo pop up, this gold trimmed lettering that then just descended into space, was intense to say the least. It immediately drew your attention into the center of the screen and started talking about um, things you had never even heard of, nothing you could even dream up, where it was this empire and this crazy universe taking place not even in the time where you're talking about. It's not in the future, it's in the past, yet it's somewhere that looks like Earth, but it's also completely different. And you're not understanding what's really being thrust in front of you, yet it all seems familiar, which is something I'll talk about a little bit later. Um, you then see this ship get attacked, and things are getting thrown at you super fast, really quickly. You see these droids, people getting attacked. You see this dark figure emerge out of smoke who seems to be a samurai, but also this robot, and he has a crazy voice, and he seems super insanely strong. He can throw a man with one arm. He has all of these extremely bright colored troops that are all just shooting and taking down all these random men mercilessly, and it's all very, very intense. And I was just loving every second of it. I felt intimidated yet excited, and I was just getting drawn in more and more every second of every frame. This golden robot wandering around with a British accent, and you have this tiny trash can with 2 legs just wheeling itself around. apparently making snide remarks with these beeps and boops, and it was super intense, really, really, really cool. And then you see a princess, a beautiful princess who's got very unique hairstyle that is similar to what you might see in like a medieval story, but at the same time, something off about it and very otherworldly, which is exactly what they wanted to do. And then you see this character eventually, after the robots have escaped and Darth Vader is berating the princess, you see a desert planet and you see a character being called. It's just a young guy, Luke Skywalker. Looks like any other dude. He's got kind of a frumpy looking, just white like outfit on. Makes sense, I guess, that they're kind of living off whatever they can have, and so his clothing doesn't look especially nice. It's probably what you would expect for a farm boy to wear who's living on a desert planet. Then you start to get to know who he is. You find out about his estranged family, this relationship with his aunt and uncle. He wants to get out. He wants to take the next step, the next chapter in his life, but he's feeling like he has to live by the rules set by him, by his family, by his reality. He's stuck on this crappy little world trying to decide what he wants to do. And because of that, I instantly identified with him, which is the point. He's the everyman. He's the character that you're supposed to see and go, okay, this is who we're riding with. And I've always liked Luke Skywalker. Since I was that young, I've always thought Luke Skywalker was cool. As I've gone on and seen who he became throughout the trilogy and what he became as a hero, when I was a little kid, he was my favorite character. But as I got a little bit older and got into the teenage years and that kind of thing, I became a little bit more identified with Han Solo, which is very, very, very common. He's the cool guy. He's the one that everybody wants to be. He's the guy that no matter what situation, he can probably handle himself and he'll either talk his way or shoot his way out of it. Super amazing character. The Rogue, everyone wants to identify with the Rogue. As I got a little bit older and as I was getting through high school, I started to think back on who these characters are, how they respond to things, and ultimately who I really felt I was the most similar to. And I always knew I was closest to Luke, which, I mean, realistically is probably why so many people are, and it's because he's honest. Luke Skywalker, to me, is the most real portrayal of the true hero character as you can get. Who he is as a man is simple. He went from being the farm boy to the fighter to the Jedi to the master, and even if you just stick with the first 3 movies of the Star Wars now saga, he is a very simple archetype. And Lucas, I think, did this exactly the way he wanted to, because he wanted it to be a symbol for who you could identify with. He was the audience who would then become the person being persecuted and forced to change and grow, who then eventually becomes a true hero, someone that not only you identify with, but aspire to be like. And Luke Skywalker, to me, is, in a weird way, who I've always wanted to become. I come from also a poor family. Not a lot of money going around, but we made do with what we could, and we would eventually make the most of whatever we had. sometimes being given things by other people, sometimes making enough to be able to splurge, have a little bit of fun with the money and that kind of thing. And so living in that kind of environment, seeing a guy living in a desert farm, I could identify with him. I could understand where he was coming from. And another thing is that when you have a character who then has a tragic event happen, and you see him have his moment of grief when his aunt and uncle are killed, he then moves past it and goes on an adventure. He then says, I'm not going to just live on this world that I've been put in front of. Instead, I'm going to think of the next best thing that I can, which is ultimately going with Obi-Wan, going and fighting the Empire and becoming a Jedi like his father. It's I think that simple step is something that a lot of people might not be able to do. A lot of times you'll hear about people who then have this horrible event occur and they fall back on things around them, or they take up some kind of habit or something like that, instead of going the best way possible, which is to identify who you are, your circumstances, and go, okay, I'm going to become more than what's expected of me. I'm going to become the hero of my own story. I am also a Christian, and so I have a spiritual connection to this kind of intense connection to the world or the universe that Luke has with the Force. It was something that I immediately had a clear similarity to, and something that I thought was really interesting and really cool, seeing that intense connection to the world around you, that not only you're able to influence yourself, but use it in a way that ultimately betters everyone around you, which I found both beautiful, poetic, and also useful. I thought that was really, really cool. He then goes on to become a hero in the rebellion, who is using what little knowledge and little skills he has of being a pilot to ultimately save the galaxy, or at least hinder the Empire enough to where kind of getting justice for Alderaan being destroyed and the lives that have been ruined by the Empire ultimately being worth it, and being able to find some form of solace in that situation, which is amazing. You then see him become something that I think a lot of people don't really realize, is he is becoming a Jedi, being trained in the most basic abilities that Yoda can teach him in the small, minor amount of time that he has, because his master, or would-be master, Obi-Wan, is then killed minutes, days after they had started to interact. From then, he has a goal to fight Darth Vader, or at least get, hopefully, revenge for Obi-Wan, who then tells him to visit Yoda. He needs to train, become stronger, and actually become a true Jedi, instead of this quote-unquote Padawan that he is at the moment of the Empire. So as he's dealing with this, and he meets this unexpected creature that seems to be just this crazy little hermit living in the middle of a disgusting swamp planet, he eventually realizes the wisdom and the power that Yoda really has. The ability to come across as a doddering old fool who is going to fight a robot trash can over a hot dog or a breadstick at the time. You then see the idea that physical appearance does not ultimately matter. It's all about the will and the ability to move past what you are. Similar to what he had already learned in A New Hope, only then he was realizing how that's going to be kind of the song of what the Jedi ultimately need to be. It is looking past yourself, looking past your circumstances, and doing what is ultimately best for the universe in Star Wars, but also you yourself as a person in your sphere of influence. So again, you're getting life lessons tossed down every few minutes in the Star Wars films, all with this amazing, crazy, intense veneer of blaster fire and spaceships and everything else getting destroyed, things getting blown up, and it is fantastic. Luke Skywalker then goes from being the naive child he is to the fighter that helps fight and save and defend against the Empire, who then, by Return of the Jedi, has become something completely different. He's become a Jedi who is basically living off of myth. Everything that he's been taught by Yoda has been so minute and so small in comparison to all the other Jedi before him that have had full training. There's been classes, there's been years of their lives dedicated to this. This practice of not only looking past yourself, but connecting with the world, connecting with the universe, who then are able to be skilled both in combat, be skilled both in meditation, be skilled both in all of these things, yet also just being able to naturally grow from being a child, getting taught these things, that also you would become an adult or an adolescent who then becomes a teenager, who then becomes an adult who has refined and sharpened this tool of the Force. And yet Luke Skywalker does not have that to his benefit. He is kind of a guy who's been literally dropped into this new way of living by having his family killed and then finding out, you're going to be pretty much the chosen one. You're now the guy that's going to have to solve everything, which he still has his group of friends to help him, but you detect something that Mark Hamill, I think, portrays in his performance in Return of the Jedi, which is amazing, is a guy who stops thinking about everything in the basic 3 dimensions. He's no longer just seeing his friend, the princess, or his friend, the smuggler, who at first he was angry with and judgmental over Han Solo leaving, that it then gets to the point where they're in Jabba's sail barge in a horrible circumstance. Luke's killed the Rancor but been captured, and he's stuck there when they were trying to rescue everyone. Yet he's completely calm. Han Solo is freaking out, going like, great. Goes into his default of being sarcastic and hating what's happening around him. Oh, great, we're on a desert planet where nothing is around us. I used to live here, you know. You're gonna die here, you know. Convenient. And yet, you can see on Luke's face, he's still very calm. He's collected himself. He's become more than who he was. Even in Empire, when you can see he was dealing with this intense, crazy circumstance of fighting who he finds out is his father in Darth Vader, he then has to move past this crazy, insane twist, which is not only a twist for the audience, but for this character. He's screaming, no, that's impossible. You're literally finding out, not only was your family killed off, you thought your dad was already long gone and your mother was long gone, when you find out Hitler, who has been wiping out giant planets, is then your dad. And he wants you to join the family business. It's horrible. And yet, he takes these terrible circumstances, literally losing his hand by his own father, being mutilated by a family member that he just found out was his family member, is earth-shattering. it can break a person's psyche, and yet this man who is put in um, the worst circumstances possible, he's alone, then goes, okay. And to me, a lot of people think the moment he jumps off of the scaffolding in Empire Strikes Back on Yavin, a lot of people think Cloud City was a moment of him giving up and him just kind of letting go and letting himself die. But I think in that moment, you see his personality change. He shifts from being the boy who is becoming the man who is dealing with all these crazy emotions and, oh, I want to be a Jedi, but I also want to protect my friends and save people as best as I can. I don't know if I'll ever learn how to be this way. You see a lot of that turmoil on Dagobah when he's training with Yoda, yet there's a moment on his face when he turns and looks down and then looks back up, and you see kind of a veneer like wash away from his eyes. They kind of soften, and I think in that moment, a lot of people might not agree with me, which is totally fine. Leave it in the comments. Let me know what you think. But he lets go and becomes the hero that I think a Jedi is. He drops who he was even seconds prior and becomes one with the galaxy. He gives himself up to fate, to God, to whatever you believe in. He's given himself up to the Force. And so he lets himself go, and no matter what's going to happen, he's relieved himself of any preconceived notions. And ultimately, I think that was him taking the path of being a real, true Jedi. Ultimately, where it becomes fruition of him being a Jedi like the father before me in the Emperor's throne room in Return of the Jedi. And he descends into this massive pit where most people would think this is the end, this is his death, this is him giving up completely, but instead I believe it's the opposite of that. It's him giving himself up to something greater, which it's amazing. It's one of the most beautiful, cool, interesting moments I think in storytelling I've ever seen, and also film I've ever seen. Amazing, amazing moment that most people are thinking more about the fact that, oh, Darth Vader has just revealed himself to be Anakin Skywalker, which is a huge moment in and of itself. But I think for the Luke character, which is the character that is the true hero of Star Wars, it's the most important character that we get in all of the Star Wars mythos, which I know is weird for a lot of people to say, because a lot of people will be like, oh, well, Anakin Skywalker's through all of them, or in the main films, or it's all about the greater story, and it's more of an ensemble, which is true. It's an ensemble cast, but it's ultimately all about the perspective of Luke Skywalker. He is the vessel that all of us are traveling in to get to the end of the story. And when you see him become this Jedi who is then able to be in Return of the Jedi, that is so calm and collected and waves his hand to the side to force choke Gamorrean guards, which a lot of people think, oh, it's him dabbling in the dark side, which could be true, but I think also it is just a being, a human, who is interacting with the Force as the circumstances dictate. He's let himself free himself a little bit of who he was, and now his abilities have amplified. He's no longer the guy just swinging his lightsaber side to side like he was on Cloud City. He's now using the Force to his own benefit. He's able to wave his hand and force choke a Gamorrean guard that could have been a formidable creature in one movie prior. You're literally seeing his abilities amplify and amplify, and the more his abilities amplify, you're seeing him move away from who he was. He's growing, he's becoming something different. And I think it's an amazing thing to see, especially from the perspective of the audience, because you're seeing him no longer be this simple character that would just be, oh, I'm the hero, I will be the best guy, da 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 da. Instead, you're seeing this person who's going, hey, I'm having my body and my personality smashed, crushed, beaten down every single second I come into confrontation with any of the main villains, the Empire. And yet you're seeing him, instead of going and falling back on who he was and going, oh, I'm going to be stubborn and become this guy, and I'm going to be who I am, only even more amplified and worse, worse, worse. Instead, you're seeing him take the high road. It's amazing. You're seeing a guy who's going, I'm going to instead let myself be in the moment. And ultimately, I think this is what Jedi should be, is a being of willpower being lifted and guided by things outside of your own ambition. The Jedi, I think, could ultimately have helped so much more if they hadn't relied on their own thinking and instead literally thought, okay, what will be, will be. And because of that, they aren't able to detect when the Sith are using their own influence to take over the Senate or create the Empire, do deceit and everything else. And as awesome as the Sith are, they're ultimately bad guys. They're doing things out of selfish means. So you, as much as you can identify with them, and as fun as it would seem to have Force lightning and totally own people, it doesn't show a strong character, both as a personality and also as a fictional character. Luke Skywalker, by giving himself up and becoming more than himself, he gets so much stronger. His abilities are amplified. He's still struggling. You're still seeing him have difficulty, like when he's fighting the Rancor and he's having to chuck rocks, which might have been amplified by the Force, might not have been, but ultimately the circumstances aren't easy for him. He's having to struggle and become something else than who he was. And by the end of the movie, he has become a character who he knows that he's changing. He's even able to talk to his now sister, who he's realized beyond the fact that, hey, I used to like you. I used to think that you were a great person. I even thought of you as a very, very close friend. But now I know the truth. I've opened myself to the rest of the universe, the Force, and it's shown me you are more important than that. You're my sister. And when you see that, you see what would have been the kind of creepiness of when you find out that they're siblings. Instead, you see kind of the scales fall from his eyes. He goes, you're my sister. And he's happy about it. He's not, oh, I'm disgusted, or oh, I feel weird. No, 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 no. No. Instead, he goes, hey, not only do I see it, but I appreciate it. I'm happy that you're my sister, and we can have this relationship. We can be family. And it's an amazing moment. And one of the reasons that I think his character is so important, because all of these horrible situations would be things that other characters would have dismantle them, hurt them, ruin them, that ultimately they can't really bounce back from, and instead it would be a scar. But where these scars would normally be on a character, Luke Skywalker takes it and goes, okay, what am I going to be now because of this? And he grows. He's pruned his branches back again and again and again from circumstances, from the Empire, from all of these random events that eventually create a strong being, a strong character, a towering tree because of all of these pruning, he's become and grown and just no longer is what we see in the first film, second film. Even by the end of the third film, he goes from being what seems like a stoic character to now he's more emotional than ever, but he's not forced to be beholden to his emotions. He can still have these intense, crazy thoughts, yet he's able to either move past them and be better than his thoughts, or he's able to use them and forge them into abilities and a sturdiness that you don't see a lot of characters able to do. He's given the option to literally strike down the Emperor, and he doesn't take it. He has every reason to hate this character who is evil, who's threatening him, who's threatening his friends, who treats his father like a lapdog, who basically is evil incarnate. And he's given the chance to strike him down, and he doesn't take it. Instead, he says, "No, I'm going to be more than what's expected of me." He throws the lightsaber away. Eventually, his anger gets so taunted and twisted and picked at by the Emperor, who's a master at this. He wants to bring him down to his level. Even with all of this happening, even with his own father threatening to either kill his friends or take his sister, who he knows is his own daughter, and turn her into horrible evil incarnate, everything that she stands against, all of that still gets him so angry. He's still swinging his saber. He's trying to take down his father. He even gets the moment of the upper hand where he knows he can take down Vader. The upper hand indeed, as he looks down at his glove that is robotic just like his father's limbs. Yet he knows, no, I don't have to be this. I can be more. He then says, "No, I am not who you want me to be. I'm a Jedi, like my father before me." And that moment is, I think, one of the final steps of where he's gone from being the farm boy to the fighter to the Jedi to the master, because he's able to have all of these abilities, all of these circumstances, all of these things change him. And yet what he ultimately is a man who's willing to be something that is not him being expected to be. He's not going to just be this simple, even fighter. He has the ability to take down these men, yet he goes, "No, I'm going to let fate decide." Ultimately, he gives Vader the opportunity to not only grow, but be better than what was expected of him. He lets Hitler bump off Mega Hitler. He throws evil down the shaft till he explodes. And you ultimately see a character who is able to give himself up to the Force and have just hope. He's a being of hope, being able to not only just be a man who's doing his best, but being able to go, and I believe in the best of everyone. Even my father, even Hitler himself, robot Hitler. And because of that, you have the defeat of the Empire, the defeat of the Emperor, the defeat of evil in the universe, the greatest symbol of it. Which is why I think Luke Skywalker is important. He's a man who represents the best in all of us. He represents the best of the audience. He represents the best of the Star Wars universe, and is the character that you can identify with, want to aspire to be, and ultimately is, I think, the most interesting character that Star Wars has ever produced. He's still a hero in my eyes. I've grown to appreciate Luke Skywalker so much more after high school and becoming a young man who then moved out of the house and found my wife and got married, and what the things you can learn from Luke Skywalker and his circumstances, and that you can become and apply in your own life, in your own circumstances, your own situations and challenges. And it's something that is universal. You can literally have it apply to any life. I don't care who you are, how old you are, what you were raised to be, what you were taught, what you were shown, the abuses you've suffered, your color, your creed. It doesn't matter, because Luke Skywalker is just like you. He is the everyman. He's all of us, and yet he's himself. One of the most beautiful things that you can have by having a fictional character is someone who every person can identify with. It's the reason I think Peter Parker is so important and all these other things, but I think Luke Skywalker is such a perfect encapsulation. In just 3 films, you see a person grow from nothing to more than something, which is insane. It's so cool. Star Wars as a story, I think, is important because it's something that we as people need to be reminded of. We need to be reminded of hope. A New Hope is the name of the first Star Wars film, and it's on purpose. It's something that a lot of people tend to forget. We tend to think about the negatives in our lives, and it's something very tempting, which is ironically, when you look at what the Sith believe, it's them relying more on the anger, on the negative emotions that can be used as a tool. But ultimately, most of the Sith stories are unhappy endings. They're people that fall victim to their own pride, their own anger, all of these negative things that ultimately are going to hurt them. They do. But the Star Wars universe is about the Jedi. It's about Luke Skywalker. It's about this man who believes in the hope of a brighter future, of a better tomorrow. The grass being greener, not on the other side, but instead in the future. You will move past it. You will become more than you are. You're going to grow. You're going to become someone that is more important than you might think you are now. And it's so amazing and so important, and something that I think we as people tend to forget. Star Wars is still one of the most important things in my life. I've fallen away from it. I've become distant with it. At times, I have mixed emotions with a lot of things. What they've done with Luke Skywalker in the sequel films, I relate that a lot to the extended universe things that they've done with the character, who's a man who is still struggling with the same things that he struggled with in Empire Strikes Back and Return of the Jedi, which I think kind of does the character a disservice. There's a lot of amazing things in the extended universe comics and games where you see him truly becoming a master of the Force, where he's not only becoming more amplified in his powers and abilities, but instead his resolution and his ability to view the galaxy as a whole instead of from just his one view, one perspective, and ultimately becomes almost like a Force god, which is really, really awesome, but also very distant. I think it makes sense that he would become that, but it's also a little hard to identify with as a person. But he's the reason people can take him and put him in these different perspectives and different avenues and choices is because he is a character that we can all see as ourselves. We can all identify with him. And Star Wars as a whole, I think, is the story of Luke Skywalker. A lot of people think, oh, it's the story of the Skywalkers, which is true. I mean, it talks about Anakin Skywalker, who he becomes, and then in the sequel trilogy, they take him and make him into a much sadder, much more flawed character than I think he truly is. And then they end up making him into a character who's so sad and depressed that he plans on killing himself, which I just don't think that is Luke Skywalker personally. I know a lot of people are like, oh, that's Jake Skywalker, that kind of thing, which I can understand that perspective, but for me it's just I've read some of the Luke Skywalker comics before, and it's just poor storytelling. I think George Lucas is the best writer of Luke Skywalker, hands down. You give it to him, you give it to the other writers of the Star Wars um, main trilogy, and you are going to see who Luke Skywalker truly is. There is a consistency there where the sequel trilogy just does not have. You don't have that quality of storytelling that the original trilogy. There's a reason that the original trilogy is a film people still show each other and watch to this day. It holds up. Most films that came out in the 70s, you'll have a few that are really great gems. A lot of them completely forgettable, things that you don't ever have to watch, and there's a reason people don't talk about them or watch them anymore. It's because they just don't have what it takes. Star Wars is different. Star Wars has the superficial aspects, which are the fun bang bang laser shooty up Star Wars-ness, but you also have a story that is so universal and so applicable that it doesn't matter if you are a kid or an adult, if you're a teenager or an old man, you're going to still identify with this story. It's a classic storytelling device. You see the rise and the fall, and you get to see all of these amazing changes happen that are things that classic stories always have. You have the hero who becomes, or you have the everyman who becomes the hero through adversity, who then finds the source that they need to do. They get it completed, they move on, and then the climax occurs and you see them become who they were born to be, that kind of thing. Every, I think, classic story through literature and film and everything else, these stories that last with us are the ones that touch us on a true emotional level. It is honest in and of itself, which the Star Wars trilogy has in spades. It doesn't matter if you're seeing it from Han Solo's perspective, who is a man who becomes selfish and eventually becomes who he's born to be, which is a freedom fighter, the polar opposite of a selfish man, or Princess Leia, who goes from being a headstrong princess who is wanting to do what's best for her people but not really sure how, and she's angry, and you see her grow into a strong, resolute general who is able to command armies and make plans and able to be a formidable general against a tyrannical empire. And you get to see all of these different perspectives. So if you're a woman, if you're a man, if you're a child or whatever, you get to see these amazing aspects of the human condition be amplified and shown in such a unique and fun way. That all of them, though, I think still are additional to the Luke Skywalker story. Luke Skywalker, to me, is the true hero, be it Star Wars or any other form of storytelling. Luke Skywalker, to me, still is my favorite character in Star Wars and possibly in all of fiction, which is, I know, something crazy to say. I love superheroes. I love Spider-Man. I love Batman and Superman and all these characters, but for me, there's just something intrinsically amazing and connective that Luke Skywalker is. You might not agree with me. That's totally all right. A lot of people hate him, especially after the sequel trilogy kind of butchered him a little bit and made him seem less so than who he truly is and who I think he could be, making him kind of more of an afterthought, which I think is a huge disservice to not only Mark Hamill as an actor, but the original cast and what the story is of Star Wars and who these characters represent and who they really are to people that love Star Wars. I mean, right now everyone is talking about Star Wars theory, and seeing his channel blow up, which is awesome for him. I'm super happy for him, and he's a great YouTuber who, the guy has a love for Star Wars. You see it in every frame that he does. The man even is trying to create his own Star Wars, which I love. That is so cool. Like, that is a true fan who wants to not only see and absorb all of this amazing storytelling, but he wants to then take that, bring it into himself, and show it to other people, project his own thoughts and his own feelings on that. I'll be honest, I even felt like a twinge in my eye when I got to finally see Luke Skywalker appear who he was supposed to be in The Mandalorian. You get to see Luke Skywalker not only in his prime, but who I believe he is as a whole. He's a man who is now being able to take down an entire squadron, basically, of these super droids that are able to pretty much take down anyone. They're basically bulletproof or blaster proof, and they can be one of the most formidable enemies anyone's ever seen. And yet he, by being this single Jedi who's just answering the call of a innocent creature, Baby Yoda, Grogu, he finds him, rescues him and everybody else, including the Mandalorian, wipes out an entire group of these ridiculous droids that, if you watch how he does it, it's not even much effort, if any effort. Flicking of his wrist, he's throwing them, chucking them, throwing his lightsaber, cutting them in half, crushes one very brutally. But if you watch, it's also not too much effort for him. And ultimately, he's all doing it because he's opening himself up to the Force, opening himself up to a new experience, a new opportunity, and finding Grogu, helping to shape the future, pass on what he's learned throughout these crazy experiences, which I think we as people need to do. We need to be able to be like Luke Skywalker, take our past, move beyond that, grow, become who we might not think we can be, but ultimately we will be, and then take all these things that we've learned and pass them on. Share these stories. Give a piece of yourself to someone else. It's super important, and I think it's something really amazing and something that's really cool. And it's the reason why I think Luke Skywalker is a hero. Well, that's all I'm thinking about right now, and what I think about Luke Skywalker and the rest of the Star Wars universe. I am super excited to see what they do with him, even if they do use like a weird CGI de-aging face. I still think this character has more stories to tell. And as much as I like Mark Hamill and hope that he can do the character in other scenarios, I just want to see more stories with Luke. Even if they don't use him physically anymore, I would like to see Luke Skywalker do other things in the Star Wars universe, be it in an animated form, comics, games. I personally think they should probably let it rest once Mark Hamill does eventually pass on. But while he's still kicking, he's still doing great. I would love to see them do more with the character in any way possible. But I want them to ultimately respect who he is and what he represents. I want Luke Skywalker to be the hero of Star Wars. I know that might seem dull for some people. They might think it's not something that interesting, but I think Luke Skywalker is one of the few characters that is deserving of not only the respect, but the just the time to be given a legitimate story and a legitimate amount of dedication to building him up, creating more important tales of this character being who he's eventually supposed to be. A true Jedi, a true selfless person who is going around in this universe, in this world, helping and protecting and ultimately just being better and being more than who he could be. So I'm going to leave it at that. Tell me what you guys think. Tell me if you thought I was rambling too much. Tell me if you liked the video, if you want to hear more about this kind of stuff. I'm going to be doing reviews of all the Star Wars films, but I also want to review other stuff. I'm going to be reviewing some comics soon. I'm going to be doing probably my opinions on a few video games. I'm playing Cyberpunk 2077 right now, which has a lot of updates that have been happening, which is nice. But I'm really enjoying that. And then I'm also working my way through the beginning of Assassin's Creed Valhalla, which I'm a big Assassin's Creed fan as well, so keep an eye out for that. And then I'm also going to be doing movie reviews, comic reviews, pretty much anything that I fancy and that I think might be interesting to talk about. And so I'll be bringing that up to you guys too. Again, this is Tobiah Wilhelm with the Wilhelm Scream. And please leave a like if you liked, dislike if you hated it, thought it was stupid, or just weren't a fan. And let me know what you think in the comments. And please subscribe if you're interested in seeing more of